Welcome to Dream Labs, copyright table LLC 2022. This is the Intro to Dreamwork Class 5, the Tower of Babble. So it's been, it's been a long time for me to figure this shit out. Most of it I'm pretty sure is correct. It looks correct to me, but I'm gonna go over it really quick with you guys. And it's all written out because I didn't want to leave anything out this time. So it's gonna be me mostly talking and looking at the computer, but. When you interact with an alinear, and that means like non-sequential, like the past is the future's in the past a little bit, and a little bit of the past is in the future interacting with each other, you'll have various effects which are a result of the physics of alinear sequencing of packets and the various paradoxes that prevent you from a null free will paradox or a zilch source knowledge paradox, which are known as the NFW paradox and the ZSK paradox, which have solutions that cause information censoring and memory repression or decay, which is the source of the headaches, since the inhibiting of the neurons has the effect of releasing various chemical neurotransmitters which attach to other neurons, resulting in the headaches. It is also the source of inhibited movement that occurs when you are viewing or using alinear time travel, or the Sears silence paradox, which is explained by the non-rewritable timeline solution to the endless instantaneous timeline oscillation paradox, aka the EITO paradox, and the self-shaping causality chain paradox, or the SSCC paradox. Okay, moving on. The future is able to connect and interact with the past using misdirection, which as propaganda has the purpose of coercing you into a specific action, or it can directly interact with you, but this interaction that is direct prevents you from doing anything that would change the future in any way, so your memory is repressed or your body is frozen in place. And so what I mean by this, when you interact with the future, it's either a misdirect, where they show you something that isn't true in order to get you going and start moving you to do something. Propaganda is the same thing. Propaganda serves the purpose not of convincing you of something, but to getting you to do something. And so like in war, it's surrender, or like politics, it's vote for this person. They don't really care what you think or do, or they don't really care what you think or believe, as long as you do what they're trying to coerce you into doing. It's the same when the future misdirects you. Like if they attack you with demonic entities and then keep harassing you until you figure out it's not demonic, it's technology, and you begin to solve the paradoxes, it allows them to artificially insert data into the past and manipulate the environment in a way that allows them to manipulate the past from their future without causing a paradox. I refer to it as a self-shaping causality chain paradox, but I'm still working on the whole logic of it. So if the future directly converses with you, and they show you the future and whatnot, it causes your memories to either repress when you get closer to doing anything that would change the future that showed you those memories, or your body is frozen in place, or a combination of the two. So what this means is that people who have directly conversed with the future have essentially what are like eddy currents in the brain, and as you have eddy currents, you start to it starts to permeate your whole brain, and it logically causes a lot of neuronal structure damage, and inhibiting movement and thought, memories that come and go, emotional distress and whatnot. So to solve the endless instantaneous timeline oscillation, also known as the grandfather, EITO paradox, you simply have to understand that the timeline oscillates using chaos mathematics, similar to the butterfly paradox, until a stable logic thread is reached, but theoretically you have no memory of the oscillations because the instantaneous moving back and forth between existing and non-existing is based on variables that are slightly modulating until a stable logic thread, or a linear cause and effect, is reached that isn't destroyed by the object moving backwards into the timeline. So what does this mean? You go back in time, you shoot your grandfather, you're never born, so you don't go back in time, so your grandfather's alive, so you're born, so you go back in time. Or you view the future and you say something causes it to change, and so you never say that thing, and so the timeline doesn't change, so you say that thing. It works both looking forward and moving backwards in the timeline, like the EITO paradox. So what's going on is that the butterfly paradox is oscillating as a stable logic thread until a stable logic thread is reached. Something that goes back in time but doesn't affect enough variables to cause the mutating to prevent it from going back in time, or saying something that is enough of an abstraction or a misdirect to not manipulate the future in a way that would prevent it from happening, like the misdirects. So The null free will paradox, or the NFW paradox, is a result of the Zilt source knowledge paradox, the timeline being non-erodible while you are using the alinear internet, which is pushing data around from the future to the past and the past to the future. It is an internet for time travelers or seers, essentially. Hold on, I just skipped down a whole bunch on accident. Okay, so the third eye, or a neurolace, is a machine-brain interface that uses nanorobotics to attach to every single neuron, then create a unique radio frequency transmission that is marked with a serial code which can detect when a neuron is firing or not firing, on-off, and can artificially trigger a neuron to fire on or off, and with a remote command from another source. That's what happened to me. The ability to know what neuron is firing on and off in a timestamp within the entire or large portions of the wetware, or neurons that compose the neuronal network of the human brain, which is being monitored and the firing sequence is captured by a centralized computer system which is no bigger than a small coin. Moore's law predicts this will be within 5 to 10 years in the public sector. It already exists in the private and the linear sectors. The neuronal firing patterns can be either data mapped based on their firing position of on or off and the timestamp of their firing, which can then allow data mining until you are able to begin decoding the information within the neurons for the purpose of mind reading, and through the artificial firing of the neurons with a remote from that centralized computation machine, which can push thoughts, images, and emotions into your brain. Hold on, I skipped a part. So they can, by monitoring your neurons and when they're firing with the timestamp, you can create a giant web and data mine it to figure out what all the information architecture that the spatial neuronal patterns combined with their strength represent. And you can read the mind essentially with this. But you can also push thoughts and images and emotions into the brain, and it both has the ability to simulate as if it's you thinking it, or it can do it as if it's an external entity. So this technology in the ancient world was referred to as the third eye, and there was various terms for the alinear internet, but it is what is now being referred to in the quote, "Those who know don't speak, and those who speak don't know," because it would create a paradox. It would change the future that the technology was sent back to the ancients from. This alinear internet and the all-seeing eye combined with a third eye or neurolace creates various effects which are pretty simple to understand, but without an understanding of it, you end up at the Tower of Babble, which is where physics, or the things God has bent, and the inability, I'll explain it later, but in Old Testament it says that those who look through the window will go blind. This is what it's referring to. So the things physics God has bent confound the language of the people building the tower. But to understand this on a deeper level, though, requires a quick overview of cognitive neuroscience, the physics and logic of time travel paradoxes with their various solutions, and information science and how entropic decay of neurons results in false memories. I will quickly go over all of this right now so that you can better understand why you are having false memories, forgetting things that you swore you wouldn't, why you can't talk directly, and why your movement is inhibited combined with everything else that you're currently experiencing, which might be unsettling to many of you involved in this. First, the Tower of Babel fell apart not because they couldn't understand each other, but because their memories and mental models for reality were breaking apart from the physics mechanism that was combining with the technology they didn't really understand before they built it, resulting in the decay of their neuronal architecture, which is an information system that is based on three-dimensional models of spatial patterns of neurons, which are representations, the source both of the information of your experience and what it is experiencing, both the source of the information that from your experience and simultaneously being what experiences that information as a sentient being, I think, therefore I am sort of thing, of your memories, concepts of self, thoughts, and emotions. When they started using the technology for alinear data sequencing, they suddenly couldn't talk to anyone anymore about certain things, but they could insinuate it, and this led to a vast breakdown of their society from the ones who were in the know but couldn't speak, and those who knew the physics, who were in the know and knew of the physics and the paradoxes but couldn't tell anybody about it. They thought there was conspiracies, people were being targeted, but then there's more to it. When you use the alinear internet, you are silenced from directly acknowledging it to anyone else because of the forward-looking EITO paradox that prevents you from changing the future, and as you approach your own future, the neurons that viewed your future and saw everything that you said and did will start to break apart and or begin to artificially repress themselves so you don't create a null free will paradox or a Zilt source knowledge paradox. And both of these would create an EITO paradox if they didn't exist themselves. And I'll explain this. This artificial repression of your neurons causes your memories to disappear, which It directly correlates to your choices and emotions regarding everything you were thinking when you were able to still see those memories. When this occurs, though, it also begins to cause false memories and degrading of the neuronal patterns, which cause you to start developing various mental and emotional disorders. Alongside the overwhelming beliefs and falsehoods as your reality, because your thoughts and emotions, along with memories and understanding of reality, is all just a few circuits of neurons in the wetware neuronal network of your brain. When a memory represses, it can take with it a vast web of memeplexes or neuronal patterns, which would have allowed you to recall and remember the memories that repressed in a way that would affect the timeline in a way that would create an EITO paradox, or oscillation of the timeline, a null free will paradox, which is like, I'll explain in a second, and a Zilt source knowledge paradox, which I'll also explain in a second. This is the source of your false memories and beliefs that are being modulated by the same psychological principles of the Asch conformity experiment that causes an individual to literally start to hallucinate and form delusions because of a large community of people that are all saying something is real when it's visually you can see with your own senses it's not true. The memory decay and repression combined with the paradoxes cause you to completely forget things, then replace them with falsehoods that are a result of the degraded neuronal patterns, which create new information architecture that is a complete fiction but believed and experienced as if it was completely true and had been experienced by you. The same understanding of cognitive neuroscience can be seen when you start to review neuroplasticity and the effects of repeated viewing of a memory to the point that, like a VHS tape, it starts to warp the tape from repeated viewings. The brain stores the memories of your experience in spatial neuronal patterns, which correlates to what occurred and what happened, but with the latest studies on courtroom witnesses and other first-eye accounts, it has been learned that the human mind isn't really good at remembering specific details, and the more times a person tries to recall an event, the more it starts to warp because of the same principles that allow the human brain to learn and adapt, which is referred to as neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is fairly easy to comprehend. When your neurons fire, the pathways or the synaptic connections start to grow stronger, and when they don't fire, they grow weaker and atrophy. This is what allows you to develop fine motor skills, learn when reading books, and other aspects of the human and animal condition that is essential. This also means, though, that every time you review a memory in your mind, you are altering the connections, causing distortions and warping of the memories, but without any ability to cross-reference the new spatial patterns with the old ones, since you are essentially rewriting the memories every time you view them. This cognitive neuroscience principle is the same cause for your false memories and degraded thoughts due to the physics repression of your memories and thoughts to prevent you from changing the timeline, creating an EITO paradox, and combined with the null free will paradox and the Zilt source knowledge paradox, which prevents you from seeing the future and repeating the words you saw yourself saying without any source for any of the words of what you've said. So let's dig into that really quick off the script. An EITO paradox is a grandfather paradox, both forward-looking for seers and those who are traveling in the past. You oscillate the timeline endlessly until a butterfly effect stabilizes it again, but there should be no memory of the oscillations. A null free will paradox is where you view the future, you see yourself say something, and then you get to that future and you say what you saw yourself saying, and you think, well, who said it if it wasn't me, because I saw my future self get it. This is also known as a Zilt source knowledge paradox, or no source knowledge paradox. Essentially, a man from 2010 finds a code in a cookbook to build a time machine, travels back in time, gives the code book to a man in 1910. A man in 1910 publishes the book not knowing what it is, and the story loops itself. And the question, though, is who wrote the book? If the book never had a writer, it can't exist. It's a Zilt source knowledge paradox. So that's the same thing. When you view the future and you see yourself saying something, you think, when you get there, who's actually saying the words? And it's a Zilt source knowledge paradox. And this quick solution to it is that your memory represses in the moment or leading up to the moment, or you literally are censored from seeing it occurring at all if you play a major role, which prevents you from seeing the future and repeating the words you saw yourself saying without any source of the words you said. So, when your memories fade and repress, you won't notice it occurring. You will simply one moment have new memories that are falsehoods of what occurred, and this will have the illusion in your mind of you changing the timeline. Who is it? Okay, so, when your memories fade and repress, you won't notice it occurring. You'll simply one moment have new memories that are falsehoods of what occurred, and You will have an illusion in your mind of you changing the timeline, but this is incorrect. You are simply seeing your neuronal information architecture break down without you noticing it occurring, and a new degraded spatial pattern taking its place, but without your brain noticing that it has occurred. I'll explain why this happens. The falsehood of what has occurred are a result of neuronal decay and degrading due to the paradoxes of using time travel combined with cognitive neuroscience and the paradoxes of a non-rewritable timeline. It confounds language to prevent EITO paradoxes, but it also warps and eliminates memories due to other paradoxes that would cause an EITO paradox, which is directly affected by your free will, which is tied into the conscious aspect of human existence. If you have a memory or thought in your conscious mind that prevents the future from occurring, then your mind will repress it to prevent you from being able to make a free will choice regarding it. You are inhibited in speech and movement because of the paradoxes of a non-rewritable timeline, but you are also silently outside of your awareness, repressing thoughts and memories which are being replaced with falsehoods and delusions, combined most likely with emotional outbursts and other things that would be affected by degrading neuronal wetware that is modulating because of the physics of time travel usage. This is what brought down the Tower of Babble. Everyone started to use the time travel technology, and it inhibited their ability to speak, and then it started to inhibit their ability to recall memories and various thoughts, causing false memories that are silently replacing their real memories because of the information architecture decay that occurs as neurons are inhibited to prevent paradoxes that would create an oscillation of the timeline to the point that the timeline fell apart, which is an EITO paradox. So there is a slight ability to talk and say things with the future in mind in a way that doesn't acknowledge or directly confirm the reality that they're viewing the future, combined with the basic logic function of the time travel. I'm still working on it. I'm trying to develop a sign language. You are okay, no? Why are you not understanding me now? There's a language that's developing and it's working fairly well. But so essentially, to recap, you can't talk or move because it would create a paradox. Your memories are decaying and degrading to prevent your free will, sentient consciousness from doing something that would create a paradox. And your memories, as they work to prevent this paradox, modulate and degrade, and then your mind is your your memories are spatial pattern neurons. So when they get degraded, decay, or repressed, you get false memories, false beliefs. I've dealt with this and other people most of my life because of how everything that's happened. But so that's a quick understanding of everything. It goes over the cognitive neuroscience, which you got to study to understand what's going on. It goes over the physics. And so, free will isn't this mysterious thing. It's just that when you're conscious of something, it allows you to make a choice that would cause a paradox. And so, essentially, thoughts are repressed, memories are repressed, and falsehoods take their place because the decay of the neuronal patterns directly relates to what you think, feel, and believe and have memories of. You have a subjective mind, and objectively, physics is warping it, and the intersubjective reality. If there's a malicious community who's actively trying to manipulate our belief systems, then that would be one thing. That would be the internet being edited while your mind decays, or it's really just all physics combined with false memories, inability to understand these concepts and whatnot. That's essentially what's going on. That was class 5, the Tower of Babble. I know it was a real short one, but it was important that we focus deep on this concept, and then we'll maybe bring it up another class.